Namaskar. Hello and welcome to DGI with Sri and Sri. Today is the 26th of August, Thursday, and this is episode number 233. Here are the main points. Israel accelerating plans to act against Iran as per the Israeli Defense Forces. The dual role of Qatar as power broker is being examined now. The White House in chaos struggles to keep Biden on time and to prove a message of strength and confidence. Florida has recovered over 960,000 out of the 1.3 million jobs lost in the pandemic. And leave immediately. State Department warns Americans at Kabul airport amid terror threat. India might be entering endemic stage of the pandemic, says the WHO chief scientist Dr. Soumya Swaminathan. In global news, Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett holds discussions with US President and emphasizes the irrelevance of Iran nuclear deal. US officials assure support for Israel security. Welcome to PGurus channel, Sridhar ji, and your initial thoughts on what is happening between Israel and the United States.
Good morning to everybody, and looking forward to a great Thursday, August 26th. I think the headline encapsulates what we had a couple of days ago put out as Daily Global Insights headline, which is Mr. Naftali Bennett, the Prime Minister of Israel, is going to say there's no point in negotiating with Israel. It is irrelevant within the context of where they are in the enrichment of uranium. So we must prepare with contingency plans in terms of dealing with the situation in the event Iran develops a nuclear bomb. So I think that's where we are heading. And it looks like the IDF confirms and asserts that they have now a contingency plan in the event of unforeseen circumstances emerging out of that region. So this is all consistent with the plan. And I think what is going to come out after his discussions with Mr. Biden, the president, will set the context. But also, this is the first time Mr. Bennett is here. He will go back with clear thoughts as to what exactly the United States thinking is on this matter. Clearly, Lloyd Austin, the defense secretary, has assured him of all help and as it relates to the security and preservation of a unified Israel.
And the dual role of Qatar as the power broker with Western powers while also acting for Taliban is now being seriously questioned and examined. It is alleged that it sidelined the Afghan government in the process. Iraq to host Saudi-Iran summit to iron out tensions. And Sridhar ji, your thoughts on the role of Qatar, because this is really, really critical how this small, tiny country appears to have so much clout.
Qatar has been fairly subtle and silent. We are one of the people who are raising this flag around. They talk about exit strategy and negotiation with between Taliban and United States. And all this was facilitated by Qatar. So we were been raising this question as to what exactly has been the role. Can they play the role of an arbitrator? Now, what we're hearing is that they played, they brought Taliban, but they also brought United States, and they seem to have eschewed Taliban. In the process, they seem to have sidelined. It is alleged that, the rumors are they sidelined the Afghani government, which is the government headed by Ashraf Ghani. And you all know that Ashraf Ghani fled. So it begs the question, if they were not part of the broad, inclusive nature of discussions, how they could have been part of the transitional government and how the government forces would have stayed, it begs the question. Or is it because Taliban insisted for the discussions to carry on, we need Mr. Karzai rather than with Ashraf Ghani? So we are now beginning to see the first snippets, sir. So it just begs the question, rather than is Biden alone to be blamed, or is this whole process to be blamed for the mess that we are in today?
And the United States carrier Queen Elizabeth, I think this is United Kingdom carrier, Queen Elizabeth holds maiden drill with Japan's SDF south of Okinawa. Is it United States or United Kingdom, sir? Queen Elizabeth? UK, right? Okay. I stand corrected. And Vice President Kamala Harris tells Vietnam US Navy will keep presence in South China Sea. And the Vice President goes on to assure the ASEAN countries of United States interest in the Mekong region and intends to hold US presence there for the first time. Viewers, we perhaps have done the most exhaustive study of how the water resources of the Mekong River and the Mekong River Delta has been I won't say misappropriated. They've outright stolen it. That's how the Chinese have done. They have built so many dams on that. But do go back and look at some of our videos. We will try and put the links in this particular show more section so you can see for yourself some of the extensive research done by Sridharji in explaining what are the Mekong region countries and what is the impact of China building so many dams upstream. Sridharji, how do you see this VP visit and UK now conducting joint drills with Japan?
UK conducting joint exercises with Japan is very reassuring within the context of what's happening in the region. We talked about Taiwan. Japan is always a looming threat because if once Taiwan, if and when it happens, then Japan is probably the next country. So I think this UK exercise is excellent. We'll come back and talk about the Quad in a bit later. As far as Vice President Harris is concerned, it's very good that she has gone to Vietnam, which enjoys a very significant border with China, and reassuring the Vietnamese that we are here to stay, and you are one of our strategic partners. Remember, Vietnam was a communist country and slowly becoming mainstream democratic nation. As far as the Mekong River is concerned, we have done an extensive coverage. The 5 countries, the upstream dams has really drained the water resources, but more importantly, it has 2 implications. One is marine, and the second, even more important, is the farming and agriculture, which countries such as Myanmar, Cambodia, and most notably Thailand. Thailand is at the tip. By the time it gets to Thailand, there's actually almost no water. It's completely drained. So the fact that United States for the first time says that it's going to take a strategic presence is very reassuring, as well as a new message that is being given to the ASEAN countries.
And European leaders vow to help Afghanistan as Biden sticks to deadline. EU leaders also urge intervention before they reach European borders. And Belarus continues to be an issue with fleeing citizens and refugees stuck in borders. So Belarus, of course, we have been talking about their problem. They have a government that is not deemed to be legitimate. They have the support of Putin and Russia. That's one thing, but let's go back and look at what is happening in the evacuation of people stuck there. Do you think by the 31st of August, everybody, including the SIV holders, will be able to come out? What are your thoughts, sir?
I think the way we need to parse it is there are 2 things. One is the SIV, as it relates, applies to those who come to United States. As far as the Europeans are concerned, they're more concerned about their citizens as well as the Afghan refugees. If you carefully read the statement that has come out from the EU, is they are going to have an independent dialogue, irrespective of what the United States says, to continue to evacuate and airlift people out of Afghanistan. That seems to be the inference that is coming out. Whether they are using any parallel channels with Taliban remains to be seen. So I think that as it relates to, because they're concerned that even as part of, we are now in the 10th year of the anniversary of the Arab Spring 1, they are very concerned that most of these people, by virtue of the location, they're going to be pushed into Europe and confronted with a refugee crisis. So EU is saying, before they land at our doorstep, let's address this issue, both within the context of an organized evacuation of these refugees, but more importantly, how we take our people and the people who have supported us out of Afghanistan. I think they're coming up with an independent plan. That is the message that is coming out. What happens, we'll get to know in the next few days.
And Tanzania's president on Wednesday said that 5 people are dead, including 3 police officers, after a gun battle with an armed man near the French embassy in Dar es Salaam. Violence has spilled over from Mozambique. And the US and the EU warn of influx of Eritrean troops in Ethiopian Tigray as the sectarian struggles escalate. South Africa unemployment is the highest in the world at 44.1%. It's almost like 1 in 2 South Africans is unemployed. Sridharji, this is disturbing news from Africa. All the problems are suddenly cropping up one by one. So, what is your take on it, sir? Is this just spontaneous, or is it something else?
Well, I think that the South African unemployment is as a result of the great civil strife that took place, and their previous president has been, I think, he has been found guilty and likely to go to, or has already, is in jail. So there is a tremendous, civil strife in South Africa. You saw many ethnic Indian community or Indian background community shops and other things being looted in parts of Durban and so on. This is not a very good sign. South Africa is progressively getting into a chaotic state. Remember, in the BRICS, yes stands for South Africa. It seems to be, it's almost like BRIC rather than BRIC rather than BRICS, the way South Africa is going. As far as the issues around the Tanzania is concerned, this is very worrying, because I think there's now some indications that the person alleged shooter is a Somalian. This is as a result of the spillover from the issues in Mozambique. The fact that they targeted France is also a reflection that this terrorism issues is back, that particular area. As far as the Tigray is concerned, Ethiopia and Eritrea, again, this is another thing that we highlighted in the Sahel region. Why we are why we are also talking about is this could be, with Afghan distraction, this could emerge out to be now the resurgence of this African peninsula, ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Okay, ISIS and Al-Qaeda are different to Taliban. So you have Taliban, you have ISIS, you have Al-Qaeda. The threat in Afghan airport, which we are alluding to, is around the Al-Qaeda ISIS footprint. That is why they're saying that these guys are inside Afghanistan and we have a problem. Hence, we continue to talk around the Sahel region to point out, please don't lose sight of that. That could emerge to be a problem in the days to come.
And let's take a look at United States news. White House in chaos struggles to keep Biden on time and to provide a message of strength and confidence amid the international scorn. Abrupt leaving of press conferences, incoherent sentences, and especially if you look at that heavily edited interview he had with George Stephanopoulos, sort of gives us an insight into how Biden is functioning or his cognitive skills. That's how I see it. Sridharji, your thoughts?
I think I agree. Now, the fact that it has come out from the White House is quite disturbing, that every press conference has been delayed for quite some time. And often you find that there is inconsistencies, as well as there's no message of confidence, but there's more message of uncertainty. And there is what you call disconnect between what his state and State Department and Defense Department are saying relative to what the president is saying. So I think the message is coming from a White House that, hey, we got a problem here and we're dealing with it.
And a Supreme Court ruling this week is reviving the Trump border policies, signals rough sledding for Biden's agenda. It's likely to push back every one of the immigration policies of Trump that he has tried to overturn. So this is a significant ruling. And the Supreme Court, I'm talking about the SCOTUS, SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States, also set to rule on the constitutional validity of the CDC eviction moratorium. This is on the eviction moratorium that the CDC has, I think, recommended for the owners, and the owners are not very happy because it's now close to 18, 20, 24 months, and 18, 20 months now. So, Sridharji, how do you see all these rulings? Supreme Court is beginning to assert itself, or is it just the fact that some of these are egregious acts that the Biden administration tried?
Here, unlike many countries in the world, here Supreme Court never exerts its authority on matters that is beyond its jurisdiction. Its only role is to interpret the Constitution as it sees it, and the governance and the provisions within the Constitution. So in this 6-3 ruling, they have stated that if the ruling itself is this remaining policy. It's itself passed and it's well tested. Arguments were made, contested, and it is in place. For somebody to come in and arbitrarily overthrow is not acceptable and sets a bad precedence. It's a 6-3 ruling, very much going within the construct of the way the court is set up, which is conservatives and liberals. The ruling has gone that way. So it is setting a precedence for many of these things to be reset as we go along. That seems to be the indication. You all remember ICE was dismantled. CBP was given authority to grant asylum. Many of them were allowed to get in, with no guarantee of they appearing in the courts for the purpose of establishment of asylum and demonstrating their credentials. Many of them were located into communities without informing any of the appropriate authorities within those specific states. So many of these things are going to come up for discussion as we move along. Coming to this eviction, I mean, this, basically it expired on July 31st. They have again extended it to October, August, and September. So the house owners are saying, hey guys, you can't just randomly come and say lift it and you bear the cost. You have no authority to do it. Okay, they can stay, but the story is we have given them enough time. Who is going to compensate us? Everybody else seems to be compensated. This is not a charity. So I have a feeling that you're going to see this eviction moratorium again overturned.
And moderate Democrats forced Pelosi to use suspect parliamentary rule to advance the $3.5 trillion spending bill. Self-executing rule and deem and pass is the maneuver. Votes for one measure and deemed also to apply it in a specified manner to another measure. House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, Democrat from Maryland, brought a resolution that set the rules for floor consideration of the $550 billion infrastructure bill and H.R. 4, John Lewis Voting Rights Advancements Act that federalizes election laws and procedures. I think this is a lot that I just covered. Sridharji, perhaps you can help us parse these things and then we can move on with the news.
Great. First and foremost, this 5 point, we should not get confused between 1.2 and 540 billion or 550 billion. They're both same. The 550 billion has provisions, so it can extend up to 1.2 trillion. So there's one bill. So this is the one that was passed. This was bipartisan, agreed and passed. But the Democrats basically said, no, we are not going to pass this 1.2. We need to pass this in conjunction with this 3.5 trillion budget. Okay. So this is an infrastructure stimulus, 1.2 or 550 billion plus extensions to 1.2. And then you have the $3.5 trillion budget. Budget means it becomes a recurring. We talked about this, last week, this week, etc. So what they've done is it's called the deem and pass. So effectively they passed one and basically said, it is deemed and pass it in conjunction with taking a couple of other things and taking it to this reconciliation process. So one bill is passed, the other one is delayed until the drafting happens, and then it'll go through the reconciliation. In the reconciliation process, you need simple majority. House has a majority to pass the bill but on its own. Senate has a tying vote with the vice president. They will use it to pass this budget. So therefore, this could take up to September, October to get this passed. So they've used this clever maneuver. Why they've used this clever maneuver? So Democrats who are in this borderline states can go and say, hey, stimulus is passed and the infrastructure and the budget is going to be taken up as a separate measure. It'll be democratically passed through a vote, through a reconciliation process. So it gives them the cover to go back to these people and say, hey, we have this. Remember, in this $3.5 trillion, it's not a stimulus. It's got climate. It has got, various other programs beyond what they call as the human infrastructure bill or human infrastructure budget, beyond the measures of what is warranted for stimulus, and normalizes a lot of things: Medicare, expansion of the Medicare, child credits as a regular payment, unemployment benefits, direct payments, and above everything, tax increases and estate duty increases across the spectrum, which we have covered, but we haven't done still what we call a fireside session to take a look at the detailed views, which we will do later. By the way, they have also added voting rights and expansion, federalization of national elections as part of this. So this is a tough battle looming as we move forward in the next few months.
And the January 6th Select Committee demands records from federal agencies and the executive branch. This is going to be an interesting story because I think personally that the Democrats overplayed their hand, especially in impeaching President Trump. I thought it was over the top, waste of taxpayer money. What do you think, sir? Because now a lot of people are saying there wasn't that kind of a collusive effort as being portrayed in the Democratic side, on the Democratic side.
Exactly, sir. I think your observations and assessment is very correct. See, one of the things that we do in Daily Global Insights, while we have certain views, we expand on these views backed by research and quotable or presentable evidence which is carried in mainstream media. If you take this Washington January 6th riots, there was a Reuters report which states that there was no alleged instigated riots by the Trump. They narrowed it down based on the investigations they have done with people who have done some work on this into two categories. One, what they say is that this is random, it happens spur of the moment, but there may have been a set of pre-planned activities going on leading up to January 6th. Who that is not stated in this in this Reuters report. Now, if we actually go and Google, that report is gone. Okay, so one of the challenges that we face is that you find this report, and then what happens when you, couple of days later, when you go and Google and look for this report, the report's absent. Whether you go to Reuters site. So this is one of the real challenges that we are finding, that this curation and the presentation of the content as you look for data is really a problematic type of practice that is being followed by the tech platforms in at least in United States. I don't know about the rest of the world. I can only see the US data from here. But the point that you're making is just proves that this is the methodology that we are seeing. And what you are saying is the conclusion or conclusive, what you call the final piece of conclusion, which is to say, this is all kind of made up. We're not going to see anything that points out Trump told them to all go and bash into this building. By the way, Ashley Babbitt, the Air Force lady who was shot, they found the police did not reveal the name of the person, but he's now been exonerated, and he said, it's a self-defense action. That's it.
Well, who knows? There's so much happening, and it's very easy to cover some glaring flaws. I'm not saying that's what happened in this case, but clearly the truth has not come out, nor will we probably ever come out. We'll see how it goes. Florida has recovered over 960,000 out of the 1.3 million jobs lost in the pandemic. Florida Governor DeSantis says that he is going to stand up to failed policies of Joe Biden. Clearest statement, the way I see it, that DeSantis intends to run for 2024 for the president's post. Your thoughts, sir?
Florida has recovered, sir. That just basically tells you that, this is what UK Prime Minister is saying. This is what many people are saying. You can't shut yourself. Even the Australian Prime Minister is saying, you open up, people will get along. Okay, we have done 12 months. We have learned. We have vaccines. We have data. We have this. Let's kind of get on with it. I think Florida has demonstrated. Remember, Florida is number 2. In the active cases list. Remember, UK in globally is number 2 in the active cases list with about 1.4 million active cases. So therefore, what you're saying is we have to get on and we have to live with it. Just because we have a problem, we can't stop. And then DeSantis and Texas, they're basically saying we're going to oppose every policy of Mr. Biden, which seems to be not in the national interest. Let me give you one single example. The world is focused on Afghanistan, notably many US people left behind. the House takes up on that day the bill for passing this 3.5 trillion and 1.2 trillion infrastructure budget, and doesn't mention and discuss in extensive detail what was the priority, how to rescue many American citizens stranded in Afghanistan. That just tells you the glaring difference between the two different parties in terms of their prioritization.
Leave immediately. State Department warns Americans at Kabul airport amid terror threat. Third helicopter military rescue mission helps Americans stranded outside Kabul airport. Nearly 1,500 Americans stuck and 4,500 rescued in Afghanistan as the deadline looms. And there is a chorus of criticism against Biden on his exit strategy. House congressmen make unannounced visit to Kabul airport. That's a new. Sir, this is the first time I'm hearing this. Please expand on this. This is probably one of the first ways. We are one of the first to report this.
Basically, Pete Meyer and Seth Moulton. Seth Moulton is a Democrat. Pete Meyer is Republican. They are ex. There's nothing in the United States called ex. They are former, Marines or naval U.S. officers. They seems to have used their own influence, and they landed in Kabul just to get a first-hand experience. Remember, Seth Moulton was one of the vocal critics, which is namely, I'm concerned about how this the processing is going to occur to bring this 77,000 people across. So I think they landed, and effectively they have concluded that the whole thing is a mess in Kabul airport. It's a mess. They're not in control. So they've been very polite, for which Republicans supported both of them for going, and the Democrats, as usual, critiqued them for going. And Pentagon has critiqued them to say that you are messing up with our security operations and relief operations for going there. Anyway, the key headline is that they visited, they were there, they have an on-the-spot assessment, and they say the place is a mess.
And let's take a look at India news now. India crosses 600 million vaccine dosages mark and is getting close to 500 million first dosage number. India might be entering an endemic stage of the pandemic, says the WHO chief scientist, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, and India's Covaxin is in the final stage of getting approved. Getting approved where, sir?
WHO to be in the list so that the rest of the world can use it, and it can be exported, it can be marketed, it becomes one of the, just like Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna, approved in the WHO list. I think even Sputnik has made it to the list, as well as the Chinese Sinovac or Sinopharm. One of them have made it to the list. So now Covaxin will make it to the list, which is a big win for the Indian medication. A lot of countries around depend on India. The most important message here is using the word endemic. It's the first time for any country somebody has used the word endemic. This is no very appropriate authority. The chief medical officer or chief scientist of the WHO, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, she says Indians have probably begun to accept, and Indian communities are beginning to coexist with this pandemic amongst them, and there seems to be a natural immunity that has come out of it, which is one of the reasons why you are beginning to see these active cases, which has come down from 4 million to about 320,000. I think it's a very positive news as far as...
Can we have the data, please? Sir, please go ahead.
Yes, as you can see on the active cases is 333,725. The only reason why these active cases is gone up from about 319, we should have gone below 300,000, that is below 3 lakhs. If you take a look at this active number is 46,164. Out of this 46,000, 2 states apparently have made up these big numbers, active numbers. And those states are Maharashtra and Kerala. Kerala seems to have contributed something like 31,145 cases active, which is going up in one single day, and Maharashtra contributing about just over 5,000. Even if you take the total active cases out of this 300,000 number, you will see Maharashtra is at 54,000, and Kerala is at 170,000. So you add this number, out of 330, 220,000 cases is just in 2 states. Then you add Karnataka and Tamil Nadu effectively, and Andhra Pradesh, that's 3751. Almost 80% of the cases is in 4 states: Maharashtra, Kerala, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, of which almost 70% is in just 2 states, Kerala and Maharashtra, and Kerala making up more than 50% of the active cases. This very much reminds me of the United States, where we have 7.5 million cases, of which close to 2 million is in one single state, namely California.
And India's GDP is likely to grow at 18.5% this April. In the April to June quarter of this fiscal FY21. And Indian government approves FDI proposal for investment of rupees 15,000 crores in the infrastructure construction sector. National Monetization Pipeline, or NMP, government aims to raise close to 30,000 crores from highway assets in fiscal year 2022, and various assets are in the monetization pipeline, such as energy, power transmission sectors, to retweaking the economy. Sir, your thoughts on this NMP?
I think it's a very fascinating program, and this is not again, something which is like a rocket science. Most of the traditional countries which were in a socialistic framework, like even United Kingdom, parts of Europe, Australia, all evolved into this remonetization program by divesting and creating the liquidity to fund various types of governmental programs, especially when your receipts are inflexible. United States probably was the first country to move down that path, and most of the there is less government and more in the private sector. So I think India is moving down that path reasonably well, so that they can manage the balance sheet. So in a nutshell, I think India has identified an economic reconstruction program. While India is going one way, United States is going exactly the opposite way. United States is going what India is doing, which means borrow like nobody's business, and you borrow and you spend. You borrow and you spend, because the receipts is not going to go up. And how do you fund the social programs? You borrow. So it's very interesting. The oldest democracy and the what you call as the largest democracy, one which was social, is moving more quasi-social, conservative or free market, and the other one is going the social and less free market way. We'll see that how this kind of pans out. So that's the overarching message.
And terrorists backed by the Pakistani ISI group stole Afghan passports with Indian visas from a travel agency in Kabul. The Sikh community thanks Indian government for bringing back the holy books. You saw that picture yesterday or day before yesterday. Anticipated Taliban takeover, but timeline has surprised us, says India's Chief of Defense Bipin Rawat. Sir, India seems to have at least absorbed the remaining Hindus and Sikhs who were, you are of Afghan origin, but now they are all trying to flee the country because they no longer, trust the Afghan government that they'll keep them safe. One problem with this, I'll ask that later, sir. First, perhaps your initial thoughts.
No, I think the initial thoughts are that Mr. Rawat's conclusions are consistent. What's worrying is this stealing of this Afghan passports with Indian visas by terrorists and so on. I am sure that they will find a way, but there is guarantee around the world that there is looming security, because nothing is 100%. I am sure that there has been infiltration just based on the past evidence. That's all you can say. Nothing is 100% foolproof. As far as the Sikh Hindu community is concerned, I think it's good many people have come back. But I still gather that there's about 120 to 130 Sikh community members who are there, and they were not allowed to celebrate a festival either today or yesterday, casting aspersions on what the status of these people going to be, because it is an Islamic emirate that is going to be announced.
And in market, the Standard and Poor and Dow hit records as the markets await the outcome of Jackson Hole meetings. Indices were driven by semiconductor and energy stocks, and we have the numbers up on the screen. Sridharji, please go ahead.
Today is the Jackson Hole summit kicks off, which is the meeting of economists and bankers. The markets were very cautious, and they all moved up and the back. So the Dow moved up, S&P moved up. They're all at record levels. Nasdaq moved up. The oil as well advanced. We talked about the resurgence or the re-emergence of the economy, so which is reflected in the demand for the oil. Brent is the unprocessed, which is the Western Texas intermediate crude. So all of them have shown rise in prices, reflecting positive sentiments. As far as the US 10-year is concerned, you can see these numbers keep moving up by about 10 to 12 basis points every 3 days. We were at 1.2, now we are back to about 1.35, but still it's a very low rate. The cryptocurrencies, continue to oscillate. They didn't cross the 50,000 for the Bitcoin. Ethereum didn't cross 3,500, but still they were relatively up, and they passed the 2 trillion valuation mark. So I think the markets are fairly consistent. They are moving in what we call as the risk off. They'll wait to see what happens in the economic summit. Just to wrap up, which is not here, South Korea became the first country to raise interest rates. So let us see what happens. They did raise the interest rates yesterday, and it remains to be seen as to what happens following on.
And that brings us to a close of today's episode. A couple of thoughts that Sridharji and I would like to share with you. We are thinking of not having Friday, but have one on Saturdays that sort of wraps up the news that happens over Friday and Saturday, thereby reducing the burden on the Monday news, which tends to be rather heavy. If that is okay with you, I mean, you have to tell us by way of comments or, give us a like or dislike. We will understand where you are coming from. So we want to try and streamline this program a little bit better, perhaps have 3 days of the week and then 1 day on the weekend where we take up one special topic and look at it and deal at it with some length and treatment. See, what happens is these programs take up a lot of our time, and we want to make sure that while we satisfy your urge for factual news, we also need to make sure that it makes economic and business sense. So we'll keep you posted. Most likely tomorrow we will not have DGI, but we will have a segment on Saturday. And we look forward to seeing you again then. Sridharji, namaskar, and thank you very much.
Namaskar, thank you, and have a wonderful day.